Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I'm just gonna say this right now. This is the second time I'm putting together an episode of Billboard Breakdown on an election night in the United States, and I am not a fan of it. Somehow the songs just never wind up sounding very good, even if instead of dealing with a Meek Mill album bomb in 2016, we've just got a pileup of assorted, forgettable, mostly mediocre songs here. Hell, in most cases, I'd treat that like a net positive, but given the songs are kind of crappy, I just kind of not want to think about it. Of course, it's not exactly good either when we take a look at our top 10, where for some ungodly reason, Girls Like You by Maroon 5 featuring Cardi B is still at number 1. And the reason's actually pretty easy to identify. It's still on the top in the radio with just enough of a margin propped up on the sales and the YouTube that it can hold its own against other songs that don't have traction in other categories. Compare this to Sicko Mode by Travis Scott, still holding on to number 2. Not in the top spot on streaming or YouTube, but it's got a lot there, but despite good position, it lags on sales and doesn't have the radio to get any higher. Honestly, and believe me, I'm not thrilled to be saying this, Happier by Bastille and Marshmello might have a better shot at the number 1, rising up to number 3 on better stats across the board and the sort of upward momentum on the radio that at least puts it in the conversation, even if you don't want it there. Hell, it rose past Lucid Dreams by Juice WRLD, but that might have happened anyway, as that song fell down to number 4 on weakening streaming and airplay, and the only reason it's above Better Now by Post Malone at number 5 is because that song slipped into radio freefall, and streaming has always been kinda worse there. Now, this could be fortuitous for ZZ by Kodak Black featuring Travis Scott and Offset holding at number 6, but despite being dominant on streaming, the sales on the radio aren't rising enough to really back it up, so it might just stall out. Then there's Youngblood by 5 Seconds of Summer holding at number 7, but its good luck might have run out as sales dropped and airplay hit a very sharp peak this week. I expect this might fall back fairly soon, but that makes it vulnerable to Drip Too Hard by Lil Baby and Gunna, remaining an on-demand streaming giant at number 8, which might be all it has, but that might be enough. And that's not a good thing, because I wanted this song gone. Now, the last 2 entries are breaking to the top 10 for the first time, and really, I can't say I'm happy about either of them here either. Without Me by Halsey up to number 9 on good sales and radio, and frankly, better streaming than she deserves. And Mo Bamba by Sheck West is up to number 10, becoming the sort of streaming creature that I don't see going away anytime soon. And if you can't tell, I'm not exactly pleased by it. I'm sorry, folks, the song just has not grown on me as much as I might want it to. But on that topic, are losers and dropouts. Not really much to mention in the latter category, as No Tears Left to Cry by Ariana Grande made a respectable exit and took out Africa by Weezer along with it. Good. And really, when you take a look at our losers, there's really not that much that feels all that surprising. Off the debuts, both Sunflower by Post Malone and Swae Lee and Fine China by Future and Juice WRLD took losses down to 24 and 49 respectively, and Better by Khalid lost the EP boost down to 56, and from there, the losers seem to be following trends. Never Recover by Lil Baby, Gunna featuring Drake slid down to 60, Mona Lisa by Lil Wayne and Kendrick Lamar continued down to 70, Venom by Eminem continued to spurt out down at 92, and Break Up in the End by Cole Swindell is exiting a little bit earlier than I'd prefer at 95. But our last 3 losses, they are interesting, if only because they reflect cuts that you would expect to have a little bit more momentum behind them. Well, alright, maybe not Always Remember Us This Way by Lady Gaga, it was always gonna lose some of this as A Star Is Born slips further into memory, so it's down to 74. And Stupid by 6ix9ine featuring Bobby Shmurda, it proved that his 15 minutes of fame might be fading again. But what was most amusing was seeing I Love It by Kanye West and Lil Pump sputter down at 47. And while I think it's still got a shot to make the year-end list depending on how Billboard leverages their formula, it could likely wind up being caught between years, and honestly, I am just fine with that. But now we got our returning entries and gains. Let's blow through the latter ones quickly because Thriller by Michael Jackson came back to 31 thanks to Halloween, and This Feeling by the Chainsmokers and Kelsey Ballerini is back at 98 because honestly, who the hell cares? And while I'd like to say that the gains are a little bit more surprising, I certainly did not expect that Backing It Up by Partisan Fontaine featuring Cardi B would rise up to 81, or That's On Me by Yella Beezy would get a spike to 62. In reality, most of these you probably could have seen coming. High Hopes by Panic at the Disco has some genuine radio traction to rise up to 11. This might just break the top 10 the way it's going. And then there's Money by Cardi B. It rose up to 13 on the hard combination of streams and sales. It'll probably wind up being a hit. And then we have Lost in Japan by Shawn Mendes and Zedd, still has upward momentum at 48. And Wake Up in the Sky by Gucci Mane, Bruno Mars, and Kodak Black got a video, so that put it up to 26. Lovely. And look, most of these aren't giving me a lot of confidence for the next couple months, so we'll see what sticks around. With album bombs these days, you can never really tell. But on the topic of no confidence, might as well start with our new arrivals. Beginning off with number 97, Kamikaze by Lil Mosey. Look, I have no idea why we bothered to give this kid a career, especially in the trap genre, where you would think with this content you need to be at least somewhat believable. But what I've observed with Lil Mosey is that we've got one of the most forgettable non-personalities in this genre coasting off of some admittedly decent production, which he sure as hell doesn't even have here, given the foundation for his backing vocals is a chipmunk voice clashing with a delicate acoustic guitar and a lumpy trap beat. And again, the biggest problem with this guy is that none of this is remotely credible. I don't buy it. The kid is 16. He's not taking my girl. It's cute that he thinks he wants to. I have serious doubts that he's got a gun, and his hook even professes that he knows he can't keep this girl, and he just wants to be the backup, which kind of clashes with all the dominance posturing of the second verse and really the entire song. So yeah, no, I can't even take this seriously. And somehow it's even worse than Notice, and that's saying something, so yeah, skip it, move on. Number 94, Be Alright by Dean Lewis.
It doesn't matter, put the phone away. It's never easy to walk away. Let her go, it'll be alright.
You know, I could have sworn with that name I was dealing with another bro country artist that I'd forget about in a week, but it turns out this guy's actually from Australia and is playing more in the singer-songwriter vein, with this being his first big breakout single outside of his home country. No, the more apt comparison here is Ed Sheeran, because from the quivering, willowy delivery, the slightly halting word choice in the cadence, and the sterile guitars playing off increasingly smooth percussion, it is an alarmingly close imitation of Ed Sheeran's style. Hell, even the content feels kind of close, with a focus on innocuous details in the verses, and then getting drunk to get over all the misspent relationship, with only a few characteristically Aussie word choices to make it fit more in that lane. And with all that, look folks, I just feel nothing from this. If you're gonna rip off Ed Sheeran, why not try to get his groove or his occasional blast of raw intensity, instead of just going for the most formulaic territory possible? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's competent, but I'm gonna forget this exists in a day, if not less. Number 90, A Million Dreams by Pink. Alright, look, I was not a fan of The Greatest Showman whatsoever. I talked about this on Billboard Breakdown before. And the fact that it's continued to have so much staying power worldwide, that's kind of mystifying. Especially given that A Star Is Born, for all of its flaws, it did have better music. And yet, they decided to re-release The Greatest Showman soundtrack with various artists covering songs from the musical, and this one from Pink managed to chart. Now, I didn't talk about the original, given that it missed the Hot 100. Honestly, going back to it, it's kind of forgettable, which has always been my most scathing indictment of even the good songs from The Greatest Showman. And for Pink here, it's much of the same. And I can't be the only one who thinks this was a real missed opportunity. When Lin-Manuel Miranda put together the Hamilton mixtape back in 2016, he included pretty significant rearrangements of a lot of the songs there, even some new songs. Whereas what Pink has is a pretty straightforward, generally inessential cover that brings none of her rawness or attitude to bear. Now, at the end of the day, it's still Pink, I'm a fan of hers, so there is a part of me that will listen to this and not really mind, but I wish she had been allowed to do a little bit more with this, cause while it's decent, I don't see it sticking around. Number 89, Wasted on Me by Steve Aoki featuring BTS.
Wasted on me, wasted on me, wasted on me. Baby, why not wasted on me, wasted on me, wasted on me. Tell me why not wasted on me, wasted on me.
You know, I remember getting tweets saying that this song had a shot for #1 for BTS. And folks, you really need to consider that going to #1 on the iTunes charts, no guarantee of quality or success, especially if it's not for long and it doesn't have support on other channels, which was exactly the case for this song, which features BTS making an entirely English song for mainstream crossover. And am I the only one who's just underwhelmed as a whole? Both Steve Aoki and BTS normally bring a lot more brash personality and charisma to the table than this desaturated piano and guitar, the gutless snares, and the horn synthesizers with entirely too much pitch shifting around it. And then there's the content. It's a girl who's jaded from a bad relationship, so if she considers love a waste of time, this guy wants to get in on that waste. And seriously, what is it with all the guys trying and mostly failing to be coy with being the second option? It just feels awkward coming from a group with so much flash and charisma like BTS. So yeah, again, it's not bad, but I'm gonna forget this exists really quick. And you like to think that given their reputation, BTS would try to sound more memorable, at least here. Number 83, Dip by Tyga featuring Nicki Minaj. So Tyga's Taste was a good song. Yeah, I said it on Billboard Breakdown, I stand by it a couple months later. The groove is pretty great, and while we're stuck with the charisma vacuum that Tyga is, Offset's verse mostly connected, even if you could tell he didn't really care at all. So in the grand tradition of recycling, Tyga decided to recycle the basic formula for his new hit with Nicki Minaj, swapping out a pitched down Aaliyah sample for a cello loop and a hook that is just as repetitive, but somehow a lot more annoying. Now part of this is the vibe. Taste managed to slip into a relaxed groove where not trying actually worked. But with a slightly more upbeat dip, especially with Nicki Minaj's verse, it makes you pay more attention to the content. With the first verse being all about Tyga having sex in graphic detail, Nicki Minaj rhyming issues with itself 4 times in a row, and with all the repetition here, it's impossible not to notice how increasingly empty and bereft of real punchlines this song is. So yeah, it's not terrible, but while Nicki Minaj is now in the position of referencing past hits, that might be as clear of a sign as any that I don't think this is gonna do well. Just saying. Number 80, Topanga by Trippie Redd.
I might take that little bitch to Topanga. I said, stop, little bitch, you in danger. Yeah, you in danger. I might take your little ass to Topanga. Just don't move like no motherfucking stranger. No, I Topangas. Boom, 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 boom. Stop, you in danger.
So apparently Trippie Redd put out a 3rd mixtape, and can I just say it's kind of hilariously ironic that despite all the hype that Nicki's throwing behind her guest appearances, she got beaten out by this. And let me get something straight, I was actually kind of looking forward to praising this production. The knocking clap playing off the more developed piano line, it sounds good, and Trippie Redd embracing a lighter sung flow could work, but then we get the caterwauling chipmunk sample dominating the production, and I came to the sharp realization that for as pretty as this production is, it doesn't remotely work with lyrics all about saving some girl by shooting people. At least when Post Malone made Candy Paint in a lighter vein, she just tried to focus on his car, not gunning people down. It just leads to a really dissonant feeling overall, especially with that really abortive ending. So yeah, this at least had some potential, but given how underdeveloped it feels, and not surprising coming from Trippie Redd, doesn't work. Sorry. Number 76, Talk to Me by Tory Lanez and Rich the Kid. Seriously, is this just gonna be the week of underdeveloped, forgettable personalities breaking onto the Hot 100? Look, I even live in Toronto. As much as I wanted to give Tory Lanez a chance, nobody really cares what he's dropping. I don't think anybody anywhere has ever cared about Rich the Kid. Talk about a waste of a Kendrick cosign. So now we get this song, where Tory Lanez describes his girl as a prissy little missy, even as he's drowned out in auto-tune against an overweight trap beat and some rinky-dink keys. But at least he's better than Rich the Kid, who continues to show a painfully weak flow, rhyme pillow with kiss you, and talk about a girl who eats her cornbread. Seriously, that might be the most interesting parts of these otherwise painfully forgettable song. The cornbread and a prissy little missy. We might be in trouble here, folks, with everybody involved, even though I've got no illusions this is gonna stick around. It's Tory Lanez, and honestly, thank God for that. Next up, number 54, Last Memory by Takeoff.
Nothing I remember, they calling me daddy, the mattress was covered in money. Went to sleep with my jewelry and chains on, had to wake up and recount the money. I got a bitch, she gon' kill for real, talking about Clyde and Bunny.
So, in the chain of Migos members releasing solo albums and probably not regretting it as much as they should have, we now have Takeoff dropping his first solo project, with this being the lead-off single. One verse with an extended hook on both ends. That's it. Now, I'll be honest, I tend to stick up for Takeoff more than the other members of Migos because I think he's at least a competent rapper, and he's got a more distinctive, gruff voice more of the time. But seriously, what is it with trap artists we picking shrill and really grating production, with that thin, synthetic vocal melody playing off the faint bubbling effects, the hi-hats that just flood the mix, and a bass with no groove or momentum? And then for some reason, Takeoff sounds increasingly forgettable and disinterested on his hook, and then for the first half of the verse, and then you get to the content, and look, I'll give Takeoff a little bit of credit for a bit more structure in his flows and a little bit more connective tissue between his bars and references. But beyond that, what is Takeoff delivering that is distinct that we haven't heard hundreds of times coming from Migos as a group? A solo project is supposed to project what makes you different and interesting and special while reminding you of the familiar, not just wallowing in it. Whereas the biggest reminder I'm getting from this song is that, man alive, Migos really needs to stick together, because this is not that good. And finally, number 28, Arms Around You by XXXTENTACION and Lil Pump featuring Maluma and Swae Lee.
All around you to make sure no one can harm you. Let me have you, boy.
Alright, so originally this is a song put together as a collaboration between XXXTENTACION and upcoming artist Rio Santana. But then X died, Lil Pump got co-headlining credits, and then Rio Santana was outright replaced with Maluma and Swae Lee. And you all wonder why I think the label's cravenly monopolizing every element of X's leftover recordings with as many other names tacked on for traffic as possible. Kinda gross. Hell, Skrillex co-produced this, why not tack his name on too? And yeah, this is no exception to that rule. Seriously, the production sounds locked in an off-brand mix from 2016 with its runny atmospherics, the snap, and the desaturated piano drained of any sort of significant melody. And look, of the guest stars, at least Maluma sounds somewhat comfortable over this tropical groove, but Swae Lee's performance is utterly forgettable, my eyes gloss over whenever he comes on, and you think for more of a sensitive love song, Lil Pump wouldn't spend his verse trying to take your wife and shove his dick right down her throat amidst a haze of drugs and strippers. In other words, it's another shambling mess of a song stitched together from spare parts in order to capitalize on XXXTENTACION's remaining popularity, and it's not even coherent. It's gross. Let's move on. So yeah, this week sucked. Let's throw the best to Pink with A Million Dreams, and even that song's only decent. But when you go to the worst, yeah, Arms Around You, it's snagging that because on top of the gross nature of construction, it still winds up feeling forgettable, dated, and painfully mediocre, with a tie going out for dishonorable mention to Kamikaze by Lil Mosey and Talk to Me by Tory Lanez and Rich the Kid. Two utterly worthless and really forgettable songs. Can we at least get something at least a little better with some staying power, please? Move past all of this or just put 2018 behind us? Well, we'll see what happens next week. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.